All right, looks like we are live, everybody. How's it going? Tons of stuff happening over the weekend at federal facilities in Portland and Chicago. And we're going to be talking about how this looks like an insurgency and the beginning of the next civil war. You've always heard me talking about that I think we are already in the, we're already in World War III when it comes to the conflict that we see in Russia and Ukraine, in Israel, and the Middle East. I think that World War III, you've heard me say a lot, is not going to look the same as World War II because now we've got a bunch of nuclear armed powers. And so we're not going to have the big conventional armies going up against one another like we used to. So World War III is going to look different. And I would say Civil War II in the United States is going to look different as well. And so we're going to talk about what I think we should be looking for. And if you see these people sitting around here behind me, these are some of your fellow Hot Zonians. We want to give a welcome to them today. They're here on a tour that we did to Panama. It's our second one this year. And are you guys having a good time?
We are.
Yeah. Good. So there may be some more coming and going during the live, but they're just here to watch this thing unfold. So before we get to that, I need to say thank you to the Wellness Company, our sponsor today. And I think I got the video in there. Let's see. Maybe I didn't. Oh, I was sure that I did. I just can't see it. uh, Let's see. Not that one, not that one, not that one, not that one. Okay, I must have forgot to, I got to add it real quick. Bear with me, technical difficulties and all that. I'm usually cramming at the last minute to get all of the videos and stuff in here that I wanted to. And I know I put it in, I just can't find it. There it is. Okay.
Have you been feeling off
right, so
ever
here we
since that thing everybody was pressured into getting a couple of years ago? Well, you're not imagining it, and now there's research to back it up. In a recent study titled Risk Stratification for Future Cardiac Arrest After the Jab, Dr. Peter McCullough, one of the most respected voices in the field, highlights a concerning trend: a rise in sudden cardiac issues among young, healthy people. Now, the research points to tiny hidden patches of heart inflammation, hard to detect even with advanced tools, that may quietly build up over time. And the scary...
You go to twc.health/hotzone. They're our sponsor today. Use code HOTZONE. You can get 10% off and free shipping. And so thank you for them. I just do that so you guys will all post in the chat. No sound. That tells YouTube's algorithm everybody loves this video and they show it to more people. So also, if you want to post in the chat, tell us where you're coming in from. And we will, I'll go back and read that later. I love seeing all the different places people are watching from. Okay, so lots of crazy stuff happening in Chicago and Portland overnight. As you know, I've done a lot of reporting on Antifa, and I have been assaulted multiple times by Antifa. And what we're going to find out today is that this is their modus operandi. As a matter of fact, so my friend Matt Tardio, he's at Anger Tab on YouTube and on X. He's in Portland now, and he's been reporting from the ICE facility there over the last few days. And he ran into another influencer guy named Nick Sordor, who I have vehemently disagreed with in the past, but I have to say that what I see happening to Nick is what should make any American's blood boil. So I'm going to show you just like a 1-minute clip of him just trying to walk down a public sidewalk in near the ICE facility. So check this out. Here, this little Cheeto eater is coming after him. I've got the sound turned down because there's a lot of cursing in this. But all these Antifa people start blocking his way because he's got an American flag. He can't walk down. Now they're surrounding him and they're trying to, push him around. You'll see in a minute, they grab his flag and run off, and he has to go and fight to get it back. Here's a Muslim guy that's, who knows if he's even an American citizen, and he's being pushed and shoved, and he's getting, kind of in a bad way there. Definitely, that is assault. There's no question about it. That is assault. Now he's going back and trying to retrieve his flag from that Muslim guy. And you can see these little Cheeto eaters here. They're got their masks on, and they're really angry. They've been LARPing all around. These guys have been doing this for years. Of course, they were doing it during the first Trump administration. And you know what LARPing is? I've used that term a lot. Maybe you don't know what that is. There's a subculture of young people in America who likes to go out and basically do mock battles against one another. They pretend that they're, back in the Dark Ages or in the Crusades or something, and they have Nerf swords and shields, and they go out and they go camping and they fight one another, have these mock battles. Well, I call this LARPing because these Antifa idiots are leaving their mama's basement. They're taking shields, gas masks, goggles, helmets, and sometimes body armor, and weapons, whether they're blunt objects or sharp objects or even the pew-pew kind. It was very common to see them assault people who are doing what they don't want them to do. So these are the people that are calling for the police to be defunded. They want to defund the police. They don't actually want to defund the police. They just want to become the police. They want to be the police, and they like taking over an area and being able to tell regular passersby what they can do, whether they can pass, whether they can film, things that are actual rights guaranteed to us by the Constitution. And that should be prosecuted as kidnapping and assault and everything else. And now we're starting to see that happen. We're starting to see the Trump administration at least attempt to do something about it. During the first Trump administration, President Trump didn't go as hard against this. I think maybe he felt like if we just don't give them any oxygen, that they'll kind of fade away. And that's won't be such a bad problem. But actually what we saw was the opposite. The year before the Trump administration took office the first time, so what was that, 2016, there were assaults against federal agents. Now, federal officers include everything from National Park Police to ICE agents to the DEA to the Secret Service, etc. But they don't break those out very well in the numbers for us to look at. But if you just take all assaults against federal agents in 2016, it was in the hundreds. And then as soon as President Trump took office, it jumped into the thousands. They had 2,700 the first year of his office. And then it continued up from there. The last year of President Trump's first term, there were more than 18,000 assaults on federal agents, thousands of injuries in one altercation alone at the White House, where these Black Lives Matter and Antifa guys were trying to break into the White House, and they were intent on burning the White House. They would have set the White House on fire. There's no question about that. That was their intent. And the state Secret Service and the uniformed Secret Service police officers were defending the White House. They were breaking down the fence, pulling down the fence around the White House, and more than a dozen, I think it was like 16 Secret Service agents were injured in that melee. Just in one night, 16 Secret Service agents assaulted, and we've seen tons of videos of Antifa firing very large fireworks at the police. We've seen them throwing frozen water bottles, which is that's a deadly weapon, at the police, and even the National Park Police, who were charged with defending these some of our historic statues that these jokers wanted to tear down, were viciously assaulted, bloodied, sent to the hospital. When I was in Portland and Seattle reporting on that, I saw multiple federal agents from the task force that was sent out there to protect the courthouse in Portland that were injured by very powerful green lasers that were shined in their eyes, and they were partially blinded by that. So, I mean, look, my premise today is, if you don't call that an insurgency, then, or what do you call it? Do you want to call it an insurrection? Maybe. But suffice it to say that we are going to war, because this is not just a bunch of Cheeto eaters that are leaving mommy's basement and coming out and, pretending to care about Palestinians or immigrants or anything like that. This is being facilitated and encouraged by politicians. And we're talking about the governors of states now. So Jay Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, put out this message, I think yesterday or day before. He just said, "I will not call up our National Guard to further Trump's acts of aggression against our people." Well, keep in mind that ICE agents have not just been randomly assaulting American citizens. They are hunting down illegal aliens inside our country and are attempting to remove them, which was the mandate that President Trump received after the last election. The American people want that to happen. And is it possible that they might grab somebody that is with a bunch of illegal aliens that turns out to be an American citizen? Yes. When they determine that he's an American citizen, they let him go. I myself have been stopped by the police and have been detained by the police because they thought that I was a fugitive from justice. And it turned out, when they figured out I wasn't, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, then they let me go. That's not actually illegal for them to do. And that's part and parcel of them doing their duty. If you want to blame somebody for that happening, blame the administration that allowed 15 million illegal aliens into our country. Because as it turns out, getting those people out of America is not all that easy. America's a big place. There's a lot of places to hide, and especially when you're getting assistance from governors and mayors of these sanctuary cities, then it's going to be that much more difficult. So the president not only has to fight violent thugs from Tren de la Aragua or MS-13, he's got to fight these Cheeto eater thugs from Antifa, and then he's also got to fight politicians from the left who are literally calling for this to happen. Now, I just wanted to point out, let's see here, that this is going from the top in Illinois down to the police, and the police are being told to stand down and not assist the federal agents. So local police forces, which are under the control of the mayor and the governor, they're being told, do not respond when federal agents call for help and are saying, we are surrounded and we're about to get killed, and they won't come. So somebody recorded the radio chatter from Chicago this weekend when we had 2 incidents of angry leftists ramming ramming ICE vehicles. So there's an ICE vehicle on the road. He's got his lights on, and this Suburban, this SUV, comes up and smashes into it and starts pushing this ICE vehicle. Another ICE vehicle comes and tries to box them in so that they can't back up. They run over a bunch of barriers, like those big orange barrels that you see on the side of the road when they're doing road construction. They run over a couple of those and then smash into a semi. And so now there's this wrecked SUV in the middle of the road. There's a wrecked ICE vehicle on the side of the road. There may be injuries. At that moment, they're not quite sure. And they're calling for backup from the local police forces. And here is the report that came in and what they were told. I want you to listen to this. It's about a minute and a half, but it is worth hearing. Okay, listen. Oh, wrong one. That's him saying no units will respond. This is, let's see. There it is.
Okay. Any kind of particular hairstyle, just younger male Hispanic on foot wearing all black?
No hairstyle.
Okay, 10-4. And one is for the hit and run. This guy fled from the scene at 37th Place in Kedzie. It all started at I-55 in Kedzie. Then they fled southbound at Kedzie, where that offending vehicle crashed. They ran the federal agent off the road. They fled on foot westbound 37th Place from Kedzie. It was a male Hispanic younger wearing all black clothing. 99.
Yeah, send the cars in that direction. Have them stay put 2 or 3 blocks away, all right? Have them hold tight until I give you further direction, please.
Okay, 10-4. And for the units responding to 39th Place in Kedzie per 999, if you guys can just, for the units responding to 39th Place in Kedzie, if you guys can start heading there as quick as you can, and then just hold tight for instructions with 999.
999.
999.
So the chief of patrol, clear everybody up. We're not responding over there.
Radio check. And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that, per 999, chief of patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
62, we're going to clear out as soon as we can, Spot. We're like locked in over here, so we're going to do the best we can to get out of here as soon as we can.
Okay, so you heard there the police chief talking to the dispatcher. The dispatcher's telling him there's a wreck. ICE agent was rammed, a ramming attack against a federal officer, and the police chief says, don't respond. Just send agents and keep them a couple blocks away, and don't respond. So what we are seeing here is the development of organized, not just resistance, but we're seeing the battle lines being drawn here in America. I've talked about this before, that America is at risk of balkanizing, that is splitting up into maybe 4 or 5 different countries at some point if this trend continues. And in my book, Death of Civilization, I talk about this a lot, and I talk about what you can do to try to help, to try to do something about it. And I want to show you an app that I found this morning that the Antifa thugs are using to coordinate their violent activities against ICE. Before I do that, we've got over 2,000 people watching, and so let me just remind you to go to the top of this. If you are watching the chat, you have to close the chat if you're on your phone, but hit the subscribe button and like this podcast. Make sure you like the podcast. That helps a ton. It doesn't cost you anything, and we won't spam you, I promise. Also, you might want to go to chuckholton.com and check out all the extra content that we're putting up over there. We've got early access for our supporters over there to content that we're putting up on YouTube. And so we'll be continuing to add to that, and you can support our work and help keep us in the field by going to chuckholton.com and becoming a supporter today. So thank you for all of you who are supporters, who are faithfully watching, and to our supporters here who have actually come to Panama to hang out with me for a few days, and we're really enjoying our time with our tour here. We have another tour coming up as well to Panama next April, and we have a tour to Armenia next June. So if you want to travel with me and meet my family and get to see some of the cool things that I see traveling around the world, get signed up. You can find a link to the trip in the description of this video. So just go to the description. You can go sign up for one of the trips. The Panama trip has been easy, right? Wasn't too tough to get here. It takes 4 or 5 hours from the United States to get here, and then it's simple, and it's safe, tranquil, peaceful, beautiful place, and we're having a great time together. So PC's coming on the Armenia tour. I'm looking forward to meeting you finally. He's from the UK. And there's the link that I think Connie just put in the chat to the Armenia tour if you want to get one of the last few slots we have available for that. Okay, so I want to show you this app that I found that Antifa is using to coordinate their violent activities. And so we're going to go here. This is called Resist Map. I got to make that a little bit smaller. It's called Resist Map. And what they're doing is they're crowdsourcing, okay, where are ICE agents performing stops and arrests? Where are the facilities that we're going to be firebombing tonight? Things like that. And it's it's curated, so you can't just put anything on there, because the first thing I thought is, hey, why don't they just get one federal agent to just sit there and put fake points all over town, and that way, they could confuse the system. But no, this is a paid for. They have moderators that curate every report and make sure that it's correct. And so I don't know how far this goes towards encouraging insurrection or something like that, but it seems to me like they should be able to bring a lawsuit against this app and get it shut down, because they're literally coordinating criminal acts against the federal government. And that you can go here to this map and you can scroll around and look here, see. They call it civil liberty violation that's taking place. And agents are currently active on the southwest side and have been identified in the back of the yards, Brighton Park and West Lawn. At least 5 detainments have been made. So they're reporting where the cops are. It's kind of like that app Waze, which I make use of a lot, that is a navigation app that you use on your phone, and it will alert you if there's a speed trap up ahead. Well, instead of alerting you to speed traps, this is alerting you to lawful arrests being made against illegal immigrants in our country. And they're doing that specifically to encourage people to go there and interfere. And so does that sound like insurrection to you? Does that sound like something that is legal? I don't know. Now, President Trump has been adamant that he's going to get a handle on this crime wave across America's biggest cities, and is not going to stand for, he and Kristi Noem have been saying they're not going to stand for violence against federal agents or people interfering with the lawful conduct of their duties. And so, since they cannot get help from the local police departments, I got to go back to my camera here. They can't get help from the local police departments. They are calling in the National Guard. President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, has the authority to federalize state guard troops. So the California National Guard was called up, and they were called up for a different reason. They were called up to quell the crime in San Francisco and places like that. And the president tried to do that with the Oregon National Guard to send them to Portland. Because, I mean, look, let's just take a look here at a video of what happened over the weekend outside the ICE facility in Portland. And you tell me if this rises to the level of we need to call in more troops. Okay, take a look. This is, I got this turned down again because there's a lot of profanity in there. But if you see the guy in the black cap there, the black baseball cap, he's screaming in the faces of these ICE agents, and they're doing their best to ignore him. And they're just standing there being a human shield. Now, what they're blocking is there are vehicles that are trying to enter and leave the ICE facility, and they're keeping these protesters from blocking those vehicles. But this guy spits in the face of this policeman. Watch him. Watch, he'll spit in his face here. See that? And as soon as he did, they just, that's an assault. That is an assault. And they took him down and they arrested him. But as you can see, he's resisting arrest, and there are other protesters who are attempting to de-arrest him, or at least did there at the beginning before more agents stepped in. So it takes about 6 agents at least to actually arrest one Antifa thug. And if you need 6 agents to arrest one hooligan because of the again, resisting arrest and other comrades of theirs trying to run in and grab their friend and pull him away from the police, then just do the math. There are perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 Antifa thugs outside the ICE facility in Portland on a given night. How many agents do we really need in there? It's not like you can send one police officer for every 10 Antifa if you really want to effectively shut them down. And so that's why the president has called up the National Guard, because they need more bodies. They need more help. The National Guard is authorized under certain circumstances to assist with those kinds of crowd control events. And so there shouldn't be a problem with that. However, we have an activist federal judge, a leftist judge, that blocked President Trump from calling up the Oregon National Guard to go to Portland and said he can't do it. Now, this is an unelected bureaucrat who is appointed for life, and she's a leftist, and so she decided she was going to counter President Trump. And we've seen that throughout his second term, and we saw it in his first term. Every time he does anything, whether it's to do with foreign policy, domestic policy, anything, some federal judge somewhere in Cleveland or Florida or someplace just blocks it. And they probably do that knowing that once it gets to the Supreme Court, it's going to get overturned. But it doesn't matter. It's just a way of gumming up the works. It's a way of adding friction to the administration's attempts to carry out their mandate. And I mean, I think you could make a very good case for the fact that these judges are weaponizing their legal authority as the judicial branch to use those checks and balances to keep our government from running amok. And so now the third amendment to the Constitution, it talks about that a federal judiciary will be established by Congress, and their powers will be determined or regulated or removed at the will of Congress. So the Congress is the one that establishes that and has the ability to perhaps fix this, because they are using their, I mean, these judges do have the constitutional authority to strike down a presidential directive, especially if it's not a law, it's a executive order, to strike that down and to at least stay the execution of that order if it touches Americans in America, right? If it has to do with law enforcement, things like that, they do have the authority to say, no, the federal government can't do that until it gets adjudicated in court. And it's going to go to an appellate court, and then it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and it'll probably get struck down, and then President Trump will be able to do it anyway. But again, this is a way that the leftist judiciary is weaponizing their authority against the American people, really, because the American people voted for what we're seeing here. They voted for, let's see, where's this? I've got so many things in here. Oh yeah, this one. This is where ICE is dragging this guy away. This is what the American people voted for. We would like to see Cheeto-eating thugs dragged away in handcuffs. And we would love it if they faced federal charges. Now, what makes these guys so brazen? That's what a lot of people are asking. Because if you're like me, you were raised to respect law enforcement. And you were raised that, hey, getting arrested is a really bad thing. That's like a life-ending thing for people that come from where I come from. You don't get arrested. You're not willing to just go out there and spit in the face of a police officer. But these guys feel empowered to do that. And part of it is that they've never been told no in their entire life. It comes down to bad parenting, without a doubt. But notwithstanding, it also comes down to the fact that, as I mentioned before, these guys have figured out a way to actually make money by getting arrested. They make money. There's a fund that's been established, several funds that have been established to pay for their bail and to get them released from jail. Then the leftist district attorney in Portland, who was assisted in his election campaign by George Soros, determines that he's not going to prosecute these guys. And so they go scot-free. And they get the money back from their bail when the charges get dropped. And that's how they make money on this. So to them, this is great. Now, what we're seeing Kristi Noem say now is that these guys are going to be charged federally, which means that leftist DA is going to not be able to help them at all. And they will likely go to jail for at least the rest of President Trump's term. If President Trump ends his term and we get another Democrat, all of these Antifa protesters will be immediately pardoned and released. That's just the way it works in America these days. And it's unfortunate, but that's how it goes. Now you've got, speaking of leftist politicians, here's an attorney general from Minnesota, Keith Ellison, and he's posing proudly with his copy of the Antifa anti-fascist handbook that's written by Mark Bray. Mark Bray is a communist college adjunct professor. He was at, I think, Wharton, and he got booted from there, and so he's at a different college now. But this guy, Mark Bray, has been actively calling for violence, criminality. He's literally said the only way that we can fix the problem of fascism that they're imagining in America is to engage in criminal activity, is to by any means necessary take these people out. And that means up to and including murder. Now, when he got called out for this over the weekend, this is Mark Bray, he posted on his X account that because of the bad things that people have been saying to him on X that made his tummy hurt, he's going to now move to Spain and move to Europe for at least a year to get away from all that. I would venture to say that it has less to do with people making his tummy hurt on X and more to do with the fact that Kristi Noem just announced that they would be levying federal charges against Antifa leadership. And if there's, I mean, because Antifa is kind of an ad hoc organization, if there is anyone who could be called the father of Antifa or the leader of Antifa in America, modern day Antifa, it would be this guy, Mark Bray. And so it's very likely that he will be wearing some steel bracelets here before too long. And so he's trying to get out of the country and perhaps get to some place that won't extradite him back to the United States. Now, Spain, as far as I can tell, actually would extradite people to the United States if we asked them to, except for things are changing in Spain. I was just in Barcelona not long ago, and Barcelona used to be one of my favorite cities in Europe. It's the architecture and the food and the climate is just wonderful. It's just a really nice place to go as a tourist, or at least it was. But when my wife and I went there a few weeks back, I was really appalled that there is just graffiti on absolutely everything, all over town, especially in the tourist zones. So just everything is just covered with graffiti. There's human excrement on the sidewalks. There's filth everywhere. Criminality. We got robbed in Barcelona on a previous trip. And the leftist government of Spain is just apparently okay with that. They're just good with that. They're overrun with North African migrants, and the leftists are that's the way they want it. So is what we saw there. There's Antifa, and there's this nexus of Antifa and the pro-Palestinians and the environmental extremists, the jihadis. There's all of them are essentially the same people. So this is a pro-Palestinian rally in Barcelona that took place over the weekend. And you can see here, I've turned that down a little bit. These guys are smashing windows because nothing says support the Intifada like destroying a Starbucks or something. Without a doubt, some, if not many of these rioters are immigrants from North Africa and the Middle East. There's a tremendous amount of damage that's being done. And this is a common occurrence. This is a tourist zone, and they're trashing a restaurant in a tourist zone. And look, these are the kind of people that are the manifestation of the death of civilization. And when I talk about the death of civilization, I just want to clarify what I mean by that. Civilization requires all of us to be disciplined enough to just be able to keep our mouths shut if we come upon somebody who disagrees with us in the course of our daily lives, who disagrees with us politically, who voted for the other guy. We have to be able to live together even with people that we don't like or people that we disagree with. Social media, aided by state actors like Russia and China and Iran, aided by Qatar, aided by left-wing organizations in the United States and around the world, has worked very hard to weaponize social media against Americans and get Americans at each other's throats. What we see is, what I find is that if I run into a leftist gringo here in Panama, there are maybe 50 or 60 gringos who live in Panama, in this town that I'm in, full time. And so if you want to get together with people and speak English, we have a Friday night happy hour at one of the restaurants here, and all the gringos get together and talk about the week and things like that. And a good portion of those people are people that I typically would not hang out with in the United States because they're New Agers or just happy, naked, pagan dancing, frog licking, tree hugging, dirt worshiping hippies, stuff like that. And so I typically wouldn't, but here, beggars can't be choosers. And so we end up sitting across the table from one another and talking to each other, and we carefully avoid for the most part, the issues that we disagree on, and we talk about things we agree on, like our grandkids and the weather and Panama and whatever. And what I found is that some of these leftists, once they get to know me and my wife, they'll say, we've literally had this said, to us. They'll say, aren't you guys conservatives? Aren't you Christians? And we'll say, yeah. And they'll say, but you're so nice. Like they're just really confused by that. It kind of makes their head explode because, and why is that? I mean, is it that most Christians aren't nice and we're just the nice ones? No, I'm not from Canada. What that shows is that these people have been shown not actual conservatism on social media and the media. They've been shown a caricature of conservative Christianity that is hateful and judgmental and bigoted and racist and all the rest. And so that's what they hate. Well, as it turns out, I, as an actual Christian conservative, I hate racism and bigotry just as much as they do. The problem is I'm not a racist and a bigot, but they didn't know that until they actually took the time to get to know me. And so it works the same the other direction too. Many of those people are extremely nice, generous people, and I get along with them great. I've made actually some of my wife's best friends are in the happy, naked, pagan dancing, frog licking, tree hugging, dirt worshiping hippie category. And they're great. We love having them around because what we have been shown by the media of the left is sometimes either a caricature of the left or like what I'm showing you here today, which is true, is the dregs of leftist society. One thing I found when I was covering the Portland riots and protests over Black Lives Matter is that during the day, these protests were going 24/7. During the day, there were maybe 5,000 people there, and they were holding signs and they were, chanting and things like that, but they were not being violent. They were not assaulting anybody. They weren't trying to burn down the federal building. They were just peacefully expressing their opinions. And I could go up to them and I could interview them. I could talk to them. We'd have discussions and we were all civil. And that's not because they like me. It's because those people still have that civility that should be taught to every child in every country. That ability to, well, I disagree with this guy, but I'm not going to just spit in his face. I'm going to have the self-discipline to control myself and not hit him over the head with a flagpole or something like that. And believe me, all of us face those times when we meet people that we just don't really like all that much. I was joking the other day that some people are like slinkies. They're not really good for much, but it's always fun to watch them fall down the stairs. And that's a joke. But what I'm getting at is when you meet somebody like that, it takes a certain amount of self-discipline to not punch them in the throat or start screaming at them or anything like that. Just be civil and let them have their opinions because it's a free country and move on. Unfortunately, that veneer of civilization is breaking apart in America, and some of it's by design. Like I said, Russia and China and Qatar are intentionally attempting to break down that civility and cause unrest in America. As if we needed any help, really, because, again, just the nature of social media tends to make us feel like there are no consequences to screaming at one another, because we do it all the time on X. So why not do it face to face? And as it turns out, when you scream in somebody's face, they are going to be very tempted to punch you in the throat. And so then we see this violence occurring against federal officers, against police, and against everyday civilians. As I showed you at the beginning of this, Nick Sordor was violently assaulted by simply trying to walk down a public sidewalk with a flag, with an American flag. And apparently in Portland, there are some places where that just can't happen. So the death of civility is about the death of self-discipline. It's about the death of parenting. And it's about the death of unity in government. That would, there was a time, I believe, where pretty much every politician would say violence against American citizens by other American citizens is not justified. But we're past that. Now we're to the point where American politicians are encouraging violence against American citizens and against our law enforcement. So I want to show you on the another tweet here. That's it's a report of one thing that happened over the weekend in, I believe, Portland. Check this out. So this is this morning during routine patrolling in Broadview in the same area of Chicago. Okay, so it's Chicago, not Portland. Our brave law enforcement officers were rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. Okay, so 10 Antifa thugs came in and parked around ICE vehicles that were in the process of executing lawful search warrants and arresting illegal immigrants and boxed them in. Agents were unable to move their vehicles and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for gunshot wounds. The armed woman was named in a CBP intelligence bulletin last week but for doxing agents and posting online, "Hey to all my gang, let's F with those mother effers. Don't let them take anyone." Thankfully, no law enforcement officers were seriously injured in this attack. Pritzker's Chicago Police Department is leaving the shooting scene and refuses to assist us in securing the area. There's a growing crowd, and we're deploying special operations to control the scene. This is an evolving situation, and we'll give more information as soon as it becomes available. So if you read that and say, yeah, I love seeing that happen in America. Well, you don't love America, because that's the kind of thing that happens in third world countries with tin pot dictators and, banana republics. That's not the kind of thing that should be happening in the ostensibly freest country in the world. But these criminals and leftists, but I repeat myself, are weaponizing our very freedoms against us. The very freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech. They would call that driving vehicles and boxing in and ramming federal agents on the street, in a public street in Chicago. They would call that First Amendment free expression. And it's not. And so the it's no wonder the Trump administration is now sending Texas National Guardsmen to Chicago, because the Illinois National Guardsmen are not being allowed to be mobilized to secure their cities. So the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, offered Texas National Guardsmen to go do the job. And so they're going to send them up there. You can bet there will be legal challenges to that, and probably some leftist judge somewhere in, Peoria, Illinois or something will issue an injunction that makes it stop. But that's what they're doing for now. And President Trump took some of the California National Guardsmen who were already federalized to stop the crime in San Francisco and is sending them to Portland to beef up security there. Look, there is never a legitimate reason to try to kill or assault our law enforcement officers. Not in America. If it gets to the point where that is justified, our country is over. It's done. And these people are pushing it to the brink of that point. So this is a big problem. Now I want to get to, I've got more I have lined up I wanted to show you, but I'm going to go and answer questions now because I want to do this. And I got to get going in about 7 minutes. Christopher asks, is the situation in Venezuela as bad as it was back in Panama when U.S. invaded? Oh, no. Sorry. I had to refresh my page. PC says, using my 5G to dend this. Hi, Chuck from LA. The left is immoral. Anyway, appreciate that, PC. Allison asks, then what does an insurgency look like if not this? That's my question. I think this is what an insurgency looks like. I think this is what the beginning of Civil War II looks like. You know, the first Civil War started with like the John Brown revolt and things like that. There was, violent action that was taken by civilians against the federal government, and that precipitated the first Civil War. Well, we're seeing violent actions that are not just undertaken by civilians, but we're seeing violent actions that are encouraged and facilitated by politicians, by elected officials. And so how can that not be a precursor to an actual civil war in America? PC asks, why do all these people claim to care so much about Palestinians but ignore the real plights in Yemen, Syria? Because they don't care about Palestinians. They just hate Israel. Nico says, have you heard of the Russian cargo plane landing in South Africa? Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that right now. Mike Silva says, with that level of sabotage taking place from leadership of the police force, can the police chief face jail time for refusing to send help? The police chief is acting under orders from the mayor. And so if anybody gets prosecuted, it ought to be the mayor because the police chief works for her. That's one of the reasons why if I want to go report in a city with the police and I want to like do a ride along with the cops, I never go to the city police force because especially if it's in a large American city, it's probably a leftist mayor, and the leftist mayor will never allow me to embed with the police force there. So my trick is I go embed with the sheriff's department in that area because the sheriff is an elected official and he's the highest elected official that he doesn't have to answer to anybody but the voters. And so I can always get in on a ride along with the sheriffs when I can't get in with the police. Gracie Jones says, is not responding criminal? I guess that'll have to be decided in a court of law. I mean, it certainly goes against their mandate. And you'd think that people would get fired at the very least for that. Tim Lab says, is Antifa hoping for another George Floyd event? Absolutely. They are absolutely hoping for a George Floyd event. As a matter of fact, I saw over the weekend, there was an event in Portland where this skinny girl, the Antifa chick was, she's like 100 pounds and she's standing there right up in the face. I mean, like 1 inch away from this cop, a federal agent who is probably 300 pounds of muscle, just gigantic guy. And she's just screaming, just this shrill Karen scream, just screaming in his face from 1 inch away. That right there should be assault. I mean, just a Karen like that screaming at all she should go to jail. Straight to jail. But this guy just stood there and tried to ignore her. And she apparently got a little too close or pushed him or something like that. And another agent stepped in and pepper sprayed her right in the face. And so she turned around and started screaming and flopping around on the ground and everything. Look, I've been pepper sprayed many times. And it's bad. It's painful, yes, but it's not that bad. And so she did the, what you see all the soccer players at the World Cup do. As soon as they get, brushed by an opposing player, they fall down on the ground and writhe in pain and scream and act like they're dying because they want to get a foul called against the other team. Well, that's exactly what this girl did. She started flopping around like a dead fish on the ground and screaming and yelling, literally going, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And she's screaming at the top of her lungs for like 5 minutes saying, "I can't breathe." Well, obviously she can breathe or she wouldn't be screaming. So that absolutely is what they're hoping for, no question. Tisra Pinto says, have you heard about how Antifa organizers use agitator and arrest to grow their base and radicalize the LARPers? Yeah, actually, and that some of that we found was actually funded by Qatar. Qatar was paying one of the facilitators of these protest organizations to go out and recruit and radicalize people to the cause. And he was making like 70 grand a year to do that from Qatar. Mary Jacob says, did you see that Victor Marks is ranked for governor in Colorado? Yeah, I talk to Victor on an almost daily basis. He's a very good friend of mine. He just gave me an M4 for free. Like just, hey, Cash Kelly, how's it going up there in Chicago, man? Cash Kelly is a buddy. He's a J6er. He spent time in prison and was pardoned by President Trump. And he's now back with his family. He's got like 12 kids. If you don't follow Cash Kelly on YouTube, you should. He's all over social media, and he's got a lot of great things to say with this Streetlights organization. And I really highly recommend that you go follow him and support him as well. Matter of fact, if you're going to support one of us, him or me, go support him. As he needs it more than I do. And he's just salt of the earth, just a great guy. We love you, Cash. You're a good guy. And I hope you're going out to these protests and getting some good footage for us. So send it to me if you do, and I'll put it on the show. So anyway, Victor Marks would make a fantastic governor, and let's hope that he wins. I will do whatever I can to support him. Thomas Malloy says, why doesn't he move to Russia if he loves communism so much? Because if you love communism, Spain's a pretty good place to go. Spain is actually far more communist than most people realize. Betsy Anderson says, do you know what Russian plane is doing in South Africa? I'm not going to talk about South Africa today because I'm out of time. Nick Ross says, these people don't have a plan for the future of the movement. What's the goals? Their goals are anarchy. They want a collapse of the U.S. government, and they want to become law enforcement. That's their goal. Nicholas Dubry says, if Antifa is now classified as a terrorist organization, why are these people not being met with much more force? Well, because there are only so many federal agents, and we can't leave other places undefended as well. President Trump has surged thousands of agents to all these different places where violence is breaking out. But like I said, it takes like 6 of those guys to arrest one of these Cheeto eaters and put him in jail. And so they just don't have enough people. That's why they need the National Guard. Lisa Beam says, can't charges be levied against the officials that are going against the laws to help the illegals? Let's hope. Let's hope. That's going to get brought out in a court of law. Country Boy says, when will a civil war break out? I think it has. That's my point. I think this is the beginning of the next civil war. And it'll probably be very, very long, decades long, and it will just get incrementally worse unless all of us stand up and do something about it. That's why I wrote the book, Death of Civilization, because it's not just a tome about how bad things are. It's a manual for what you can do about it to make it better, to make your community more tight-knit, more resilient, and better safeguard you and your family. So get Death of Civilization. You can get it by becoming a supporter over at chuckholton.com, or you can get it on Amazon or any place like that if you want. But of course, chuckholton.com is a better place to get it. We got over 3,000 people watching. If just 1% of you guys went over and bought that book, I'd be able to go back to Gaza in November and do some reporting directly from the ground in Gaza. I've got an invitation to do that from the GHF. Free Dominion says, I see Antifa as parallel to communist Bolsheviks. I don't disagree. Rusty Spiker says, do police officers refuse to arrest people, violate the oath they took as a law enforcement officer? It depends on if they're being ordered to stand down or not. And what we're seeing is a voluntary depolicing. I've talked to a lot of cops that say, I don't dare go arrest anybody anymore because my leadership will throw me under the bus. And so I just go sit around under a tree for my entire shift and try not to do anything that'll get me fired. Gina says, Chuck, have you heard of Barron Trilogy book? I have not. Send me a link to that. I love book recommendations. So if you have any good book recommendations, put them in the chat or send them to info@holtonnews.com and I'll read them. Victor says, how is it so easy to turn all these young people into Antifa sheep? Because they went to public school. That's the best answer I can give you there, especially public universities. Chris Gann says, what about the police that appear to be there to help? Well, I mean, going back to that question from Victor, this guy that I told you that wrote the book, the manual on Antifa, he's a college professor. And so do you think he's not trying to radicalize his students? Of course he is. So what about the police that appear to be there to help the rioters and arrest anyone who complains about it? We have seen some of that. Most of the time, like Nick Sorter got arrested and it was quickly released. So I'm not sure how much of that is actually true. Free Dominion says, if civil war, doesn't there need to be an official announcement? No, there does not. And there will not be. Kamina says, why don't the sheriffs step in to help? That's a real good question, and I should get the answer to that by calling the sheriff's department in Portland and seeing why they won't, why they're not down there. Maybe they are. We don't know. Michelle Antico says, is that why local law enforcement isn't responding because Antifa was made a terrorist organization? No, they're not responding because the leftist mayors and governors of those states refuse to assist President Trump in even cleaning up the streets. So, I mean, literally, he could send the National Guard in to sweep the streets, which is literally what he did in Washington, D.C. Those guys went in and started cleaning the streets, not by taking criminals off, but by picking up trash. And the leftists in D.C. were against that happening as well. Wind and Raven, Steve Patterson says, any concern for safety if Venezuela blows up for people in Colombia and Panama? No, not at all. That's pretty far away, actually. So no, I'm not. Okay, folks, it's 5 minutes after 10 and we're supposed to leave 5 minutes ago. So our group, we've got a lot of fun that we haven't had yet on this tour. So we got to get with it. And so stay tuned. I'll be on again tomorrow and we'll be updating you on this situation and on the Middle East and what's happening there. Everybody's keeping an eye on what's happening in Israel to see if Hamas will actually come around and release any of the hostages. Everybody is expressing high hopes that it'll happen, and my hopes are high as well. But honestly, I'm not thinking it's going to happen as easily as everybody think it will. But let's continue to hope and pray that those hostages get released. All right, God bless you. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time. Thank you to our studio audience today from all around the United States that have come to Panama to hang out with me. That's really fun, and we'll see you all next time. Take care. Hang on.